The worst policy is to attack cities. Attack cities only when there is no alternative.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Champion Reads, where we talk about best-selling books and amazing works of literature. We like to focus in on the self-help, business, entrepreneurship, and even, sometimes financial. But we're also throwing in the mix a few books that are not in the norm, but we've also thrown in some books that are from fantasy to fiction, as part of lessons to be learned to help entrepreneurs grow. This episode is brought to you by Champion Circle, which is found at mychampioncircle.com, where we help entrepreneurs through their challenges. We coach them through their processes and overcome their immediate needs to take their business to the next level. We work with all kinds of entrepreneurs and so many business owners. We typically like to work with those who have been in business for a little while and are looking to move to that next level to achieve their goals, and those solo business owning professionals who are looking for that community that they can rely on for accountability, growth, and so much more. My name is John Kowach Jr. I am the founder of Champion Circle, and joining me today is the host of this podcast and our co-executive producer. His name is Coach Willie Blake. Super excited that you're here, Coach Willie. And we're finishing up a great discussion on the book called The Art of War. This book is just a classic, and if you haven't read it and you needed a reason to read it, well, we've already recorded 2 episodes talking about this, and it's awesome. There's so much that can be unpacked here, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, because this is the 3rd episode. Yep, we got it on the audiobook.
We got audio too. Audiobook, Art of War.
And it's funny you bring that up, because audio is such a unique experience. There's so much to capture. And you were just talking about, grabbing the quote that we always share at the beginning of the episode. And it's so hard to go back to the physical book and find those quotes that we were listening to, because there's just so much good information. And every page has its own quality of things that we can unpack, which is why we're like, do we do 20 episodes of this book, or do we just do 3 and move on? Because that's kind of what we want to wet your whistle with, and we want to share some great thoughts with you. Today, I wanted to kind of kick things off and just say, this is an awesome book, and you should at least read it once. I get to the point where I like to read it at least once a year, and I've shown the audience, I have this version, which is kind of the classic revised version. I have this version, which is like the pocket Bible version. It's small. I have the Art of War visualized version, which is a bunch of paintings and ways to kind of visualize how the tactics are awesomely won. And then there's this one, which is a strategic puzzles version. Anyways, anytime they come out with a new version, I'm like, yeah, I have to have that, and I buy it. But having had this book in my house, and having read through it now and listened to it multiple times, there's some cool things. In episode 1, we talked about how the art of war is never actually fighting, but the best way to resolve conflict is to not actually go to war, and to find ways strategically and ways to assert winning without anyone losing their life or anybody going spear to spear, right? The second episode, we talked about more like the strategic and personal side. There's definitely some business and entrepreneurial applications from all of these lessons. And on today's episode, I kind of wanted to dive in as we're wrapping up the book. And I wanted to dive into just personal takeaways, especially on the details, because in the third later half of the book, we get into some really unique and specific techniques. And this is where like it literally does come down to the details of everything. For example, even if I just flip open to one of the last pages of the book, there's things, and my thumbs are not cooperating with me. There's things like a variation of tactics, but really when we get into the terrain of studying your terrain, like there's so many things, knowing what's ahead in the terrain of the battlefield. And when that's the case, as an entrepreneur, you also need to know like what's my environment look like. Like you need to know what you're going up against. Same thing if you were to show up to a neighborhood park and you're challenged by the locals to play a game of basketball, street ball, right? You need to know what your terrain is. Is the hoop good? Do I need to shoot threes, or do I need to lay it up because the rim's kind of hard? Like you need to know your battle terrain. The next thing is like, the 9 situations of attack. Like there are things that cause you to take the offense based on defense. And there's so many things we could go into there, which we're not going to. We're going to be more broad and general. There's also attack by fire and the use of spies, which these are all things that are covered in the final third of the book. But to kind of simplify things and to zoom out a little bit from this conversation, it's about details. So I'll start talking about the details, but Willie, I just wanted to like jump in and say like there's so much that we can unpack here. But what are some of your major like applicable takeaways as you're wrapping up the book, as we're finishing it? What's kind of standing out in your mind, and what are you taking away from the book?
Yes, I love the general points that you usually get from the Art of War, what people talk about all the time. So if other people review the book, they have like the surface level ones. But the 3 major ones that I took away were ones that you only really hear about like once or twice. And there are 3 in the book, but I'm going to start with 3 and then go backwards. Not all at once, but we'll start with 3, go back and forth, and then eventually we get to 1, which is my favorite lesson. But the 3rd one comes up when Sun's talking about the 5 conditions for victory. And one of them being, when do we fight and when don't we fight? Because he doesn't say like how to fight or how much to fight or how to fight smarter. He isolates the timing of engagement as its own skill. The ability to know when to go after something, when to fight for what is right, when to raise your voice and go against and just stand for something, versus when it's just, you just simply just be like, what you saying really doesn't matter, and I'm just going to walk away. A great example, I think of a friend that I've known for a while now. When he and his wife were just boyfriend and girlfriend, they were at a bar, and while they're at the bar, there was this drunk dude that was hitting on his girlfriend. And so he went up to her and was like, hey, dude, this is my girlfriend. And the drunk dude was just like, well, what are you going to do about it? And just started saying all these things. And the girlfriend, sooner or later, wife, and everyone around them was just like, there's going to be a fight. Like, I don't know what he's going to do and whatnot. And my friend literally stands there and then just starts laughing out loud. He's just like, dude, you're ridiculous. Grabbed his girlfriend's hand and just walked away. And he made that decision of not to fight. And that stuck out to her. And she tells that story so much, to where that was one of the reasons why she wanted to marry the dude. Because he's just like, that didn't get to him. What emotional maturity to be able to do that. Now, on the flip side, you got, I don't know why I was thinking about this last night, but any of those of you who are parents, you might get those random thoughts and role play in your head those random times of when somebody might hurt your child and what you would do. For some reason in my head, I was going to my kid's school to pick her up, and I would walk right around the corner to where, for some reason, I don't think this would ever really happen, but for some reason, random dude, were just smack my kid, and she's 5 years old, and just like smack my kid. For those who know me, I am very non-passive aggressive. I am very kind, really chill, just like great person to hang out, and I don't get angry. But it's the quiet people that have the biggest monsters and dragons within them. So I envision myself that if that would have happened, the police would have been called because I would have knocked that guy to the floor, obviously checking my kid was okay, but I would be so ticked off with what was happening. And that's a battle that I would face because ain't nobody going to lay their hands on my kids. That's something that's important to me. That is my family. But if people were to come at me and start saying things about me, I'm just like, dude, I could care less. And just like my friend, just like walk away. But okay, that actually goes into the lesson too, but I'm not going to go into that. So I'm going to share that right now. John, tell me your thoughts off of that.
Oh, I love that. I love that a lot. I mean, I can attest, Willie is the greatest teddy bear. He's such a loving person, and he's also like a strategic thinker. You are an interesting person to play chess with, even though you and I have never played a game of chess together.
Which we should.
Yeah. Whether online or virtual, because I never know what you're thinking. And that's a strategy and a tactic that we talk about in this book. Like keep your, we talked about this in episode 1, right? Like keep them guessing. You never know. You never want your enemy to know what you're thinking. And not that I'm your enemy, but you're the kind of person who is both incredibly gifted at speaking and communicating, as well as keeping your thoughts to yourself unless asked upon or prompted. Then there's the bear, right? Don't unleash the bear if you want to get the wrath of Father Bear, right? I totally get that. And I'm kind of the same way. Like I'm really a nice person. And I learned this about myself in, it was 11th grade. No, 10th or 11th grade. Either way, I was traveling with my basketball team to Golden, Colorado, and not to shout out and throw Golden under the bus, but in 19, what am I, old? 2006. Yeah, so this would have been my 10th grade experience. In 2006, we traveled to Golden, and this team was racist, and they were terrible. They were such bad hosts. They were bad, like at being sportsmanlike. That's the word I'm looking for. Long story short is it took one move for somebody to push my teammate down, and I wasn't even on the floor. I was on the bench to watch my teammate get pushed over, and I flew like fist clenched. This was the weirdest response I've ever had. And we as a team launched our bodies onto the court and we were attacking. And it was territorial. It was very, very Father Bear. And I remember this thinking, wow, I did not know I had that in myself. I played football, but that's organized, aggression, right? Basketball, though, like I don't think I've ever thrown a fist before. And this is a totally different side to me, but it really was that fight versus flight reaction. And when it comes to taking care of your kin, your community, a lot of us would do some crazy stuff. And I love this example because when you hold yourself to a standard and it comes to action versus reaction, it's funny how we as humans will always be innate humans, and our nature versus our nurture are two different things. Our nature is protection, and it is evident that we as humans care deeply about our community, our family, our circle over the ones that are up against us. And that's a tool to kind of evaluate when it comes to the art of war, is how much personal reaction and action protocol have you practiced? Have you worked on within yourself to be able to control those situations? As a young 17-year-old, there was no control, and I it turned into a Wile E. Coyote, man. It was awesome. It was fun, but it was also terrible in that, suspension is never fun for a 17-year-old. So I'll end it there. No more details needed. But yeah, that's kind of my reaction / contribution to what you shared. And I agree. Like there's an art to action and reaction if you know how to control it. If you have no control, reaction can absolutely be flawed, and it can be something that leads to the wrong thing. But at the same time, protection is an important factor too here. And there's a part of this book that goes into sort of like the conditions of which you should attack, and sometimes the conditions are never right and you still have to attack. And that's when it comes down to bottom line. What's the other lesson you were going to teach on that?
That was the smoothest transition to the second lesson, which is from the quote at the very beginning of, I'm going to read it here because I listened to it on Audible. So I used this wonderful ChatGPT to be able to pull up the quote because I couldn't find it. It's, the worst policy is to attack cities. Attack cities only when there is no alternative.
Yeah.
And it is so important because back in Sun Tzu's day, like back then, cities represented like identity. It represented the pride, the public power. Like that's where everything was. And anytime that he would attack it, it was so slow. It was very expensive. It used his resources way too much. Bringing that now to today, what is our cities? Of course, we got cities in the US and around the world, but the cities that are nowadays is our egos.
Mm.
And with our egos, you never want to fight where the opponent's ego, where their identity are, because that's where they're the strongest, unless you have no options. So like with me, with my family, people can attack me all I want. And it's just like, yeah, I'm good. But then once you attack my ego, well, then it gets personal. Yeah. Then you drop all logic and you start to get emotional. And that's where mistakes are made. That's where most resources are. If you get into, I don't know why, a movie scene, I don't know which movie, but like when they're two, not gladiators, but like bare-fisted fighters are in the ring together and they got the audience circled around them. The moment to where one is teasing the other and then the other is just like, they have the veins bulging and then like it breaks them, to where then it feels like their agility, strength, and just like berserk mode elevates so much. But with that is an exchange of he ain't going to be listening. Logic's out the window. It is either I go down and get knocked out or you're going to stop moving type thing. And that's when it comes to, don't attack the ego. If you're going to go after something, go after a plentiful amount of different ways, different strategies to then work around to get into the city to where it's a little bit weaker. But if you just straight up try to attack a city, ain't gonna work, Jack, because you're gonna waste resources. You're gonna hit it where it's strongest, and something that could have been avoided, and it's just gonna do more harm and stuff. So, John, I actually want to hear from you. You can share thoughts on that too, but I want to hear from you. What's a lesson that you took away from the book?
Absolutely. I'll quick comment and then I'll definitely share that. I love that. And such an evaluation. I mean, we all have areas to work on. And when it comes to the action versus reaction side of things, it is something you can learn. It is something that you can work on. A lot of meditation, a lot of prayer, a lot of breathing exercises, even yoga can help center the body and center the ego, right? And keep us from reacting poorly. There is a reaction and an appropriate place for reaction, but the control of it is essential. Real quick story. we were at the park the other day. My wife and I, this is our life. Our kids are basically our dogs. And we have very, very well-trained dogs. And in fact, they're so well-trained, they do not need to be on leashes. They don't run after things. They're not chasing after people. They're not really scary either. They're just cute little fluff balls. Long story short, as we're walking around the park, they're within a 10-foot radius of us. And somebody comes sneaking up from behind, and they're just jogging on the trail that we're on, and they had to veer off the trail just slightly because, they didn't let us know they were coming up. Usually it's etiquette to say, hey, on your left, or coming up on your left. And, we pull over, but we didn't see him. So he goes running by, and he proceeded to say something along the lines of like, you need to have your dogs on leash, yada, yada, yada. And, as a new dog owner, I would have either done one of two things. I would have apologized and put them on the leash immediately, or I would have reacted poorly and said, nah, you're wrong, yada, yada, yada. Instead, because I'm experienced now, and this is a lot of times past, where this has happened before, but now without missing a beat, I knew that I was in the right. So egotistically, which is not the right word, I was able to respond back and say, oh no, it's okay. Our dogs are fine. They're on e-collars and they're in our control. And that was just my response, just calmly. And the guy didn't know how to take it. And so he reversed his comment and said, oh, that's awesome. You guys seem like cool people, yada, yada, yada. And it was the opposite of what he said when he ran by. And I realized that it reflected his insecurity about the situation, and he realized, oh, I'm in the wrong. And it was a really, really good reaction. And then my wife and I were just dissecting it later. We were like, what the heck? We're at this park more than anybody, and we've never had that response, but it was a good reaction. So long story short is, you can learn to grow and control the ego and so much more. Something that kind of builds off this, and one of my major takeaways, there's a section in this book called The Attack by Fire. And I just want to read a few excerpts from this, but the attack by fire is very interesting because this goes back to when they were lodging, fireballs and rocks that were on fire to basically set ablaze cities and things. And this is when you really get down into the weeds of how do we attack these people. Sun Tzu said that there are 5 ways of attacking with fire. The first is to burn soldiers in their camp. Yikes. The second is to burn stores, take away their means of living. Number 3 is to burn baggage trains, end their supply. Number 4 is to burn arsenals and magazines, to end communications. And number 5 is to hurl dropping fire against the enemy, just at random, like a nighttime attack. Okay. He said those are the 5 ways to do it if you're going to play with fire. And then in order to carry out an attack, we must have the means available. So first and foremost, you can't just attack by fire. You have to have your own means. Second of all, there's a proper season for making fires. You can't just launch fires in the middle of rainy season because it's not going to work. Okay. So you have to have the conditions to do so. And these are all about thinking. And there's a point to all this. Number 4 is the proper season is when there's dry weather, right? In attacking with fire, one should be prepared to meet 5 possible developments. So it's not just the attack, but it's the what happens when you attack. Number 1 is when, I know I'm throwing out a lot of numbers. Don't worry about the numbers. Just realize that there's a lot of information here. And I'm going to wrap this up. Is when fire breaks out inside the enemy's camp, respond to it once with an attack from without. So what that basically is saying, as soon as you cause a fire, you should back up that fire with another version because they're going to all respond to the one fire, meaning you should have a second fire attack ready. The other version is if there is an outbreak of fire, but the enemy soldiers remain quiet, bide your time and do not attack. So as soon as you unleash fire, wait for a response. Otherwise, it might be a bust. Number 3 is when the force of the flames has reached its height, follow it up with an attack if that is practicable. If not, stay where you're at. And it just goes on and on and on to basically when you start a fire, be to the windward of it. Do not attack from the leeward, which means be be upwind so that the fire doesn't come back and burn you. Long story short, and the reason why I like this is a huge takeaway for me, because when you're playing chess or when you're making moves, you can't just make a move and think, okay, I did it. Let's sit back and react. Today, we were going over an email chain campaign in our back office, part of our funnel system for our business. And it was very surface and immediate. But one of the things is there's a reason and a purpose for everything. And in order to survive and thrive in business is to be thinking 3 points ahead, 3 steps to your right, 3 steps to your left, and also 3 steps of retreat. You never want to have just an option, a backup option to retreat. And we've talked about this from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. He talks about how it was customary for Vikings to burn their ships behind them so that there was no option for cowardly retreat at war. And not that you need to burn bridges and ships, but you can't have that as your only option. You must be thinking offensively. You must thinking, if I'm committing to attacking, if I'm committing to my business environment, that I am committing to the process. And as Champion Circle has been alive and progressing, and also a project of mine for over 6 years now, it's never been an option to retreat cowardly. It's always been a, how do we deal with what we're dealing with moving forward now? And that is a principle that is learned over time. It is progressed through team, strategy, masterminding, and so much more, and a lot of coaching and a lot of support. And that to me has been the biggest takeaway is, look, if you learn anything, and I know you're not going to go set things on fire. This is not the Arsenal playbook. Okay. This is what happens in business. There's always an action and a reaction, and you need to be thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead, 2 or 3 steps to the right and left and behind, never focusing on one plan B and one option out. Your action should never have an out. Your action should have a strategy that moves forward. And that is John's playbook. What are your thoughts and reactions to that?
It's well said. It's
stumped him. Yes, I got him. No,
you kidding. Got me. Like for one, there's just so much to unpack in that. But I just love how different phrases in the book, different sentences can mean different things to different people. And I think that's kind of how it was written. I don't think Sun Tzu was making this to say, here's the formula for the art of war. Exactly. Study it and create it. Instead, he's just like, if that's what you think, you're missing the whole point. Mm-hmm. The whole point is to take it in and interpret what is working for you and what can apply to you. It's kind of the same as like Christians when it comes to the Bible. You read the Bible and one year it might sound just like it's like let's say the 2 great commandments: love God with all your heart, mind, and strength. Second is like unto it, love thy neighbor as thyself. When people read that sentence, let's just say 5 years ago, they're just like, oh, I got to love God and do everything for God. Fast forward 5 years later, they read the same thing. It's just like, love thy neighbor as thyself. So I need to serve other people. But then there's also a hidden third thing that I'm learning in there, which is as thyself, which means I need to love myself too. Did the scripture change? No. But our life experience and interpretation of it has, because we read things and take them in order for it to improve our life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the great thing about wisdom, and the art of war is a fantastic thing with that, is that it's not giving you the formula. It's just giving you more ability to interpret what you need, and does it in such a way that you can apply it into your life.
Yeah. And when you have to go up against challenges in life, this is why majority of new small businesses fail within the first, 18 months of starting, and why a lot of in this day and age, why a lot of marriages don't make it. It's because there's a huge lack of moving forward with the challenges you've received. And I think strategically and prophetically, in many ways, Sun Tzu was thinking about future generations. And he says, let me teach you what it means to be a commander of an army and all the knowledge that we have. But let me show you that war is not the answer. It's what you do when you have to go to war. And that is, I think, what a lot of people should know about this book, and which is why it stands today as one of the most sold books, why it's a great lesson teacher. And as we kind of wrap up this episode, it's kind of fun to like look at all the lessons and takeaways that you can get, especially randomly, from this book. And I'd like to challenge both Willie and I to take our book or our version and to randomly select a lesson or page, and let's talk about it for 60 seconds. This would be an interesting deal because there's just so much we can take away, and it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I think it'd just be fun to wrap up with this little spontaneous moment. Are you ready, or should I go first?
I actually am ready, because
Okay.
the very first lesson that I actually got from it was when I was listening to it. We, Ian, our other co-host that's usually on with us, came up with this idea of like spontaneously finding a quote. And so beforehand, I played an audio of one, and it was something I wanted to put as the first lesson. So I will go first with my spontaneous one. And the quote is, "Do not repeat the tactics which have gained you one victory, but let your methods be regulated by the infinite verity of circumstances." Now, if you are dyslexic like myself and don't know what the heck that means, it basically breaks down to, do not repeat the tactics which have gained you one victory. And in more of a mic drop type version of it, I'd say, your last win is the most dangerous thing you're carrying into your next battle.
Wow. Oh, I love it. We could spend a whole episode just on that. But because we're doing
here's episode 4, let's go at it.
Yeah, based on spontaneity, we'll keep it at that. But yeah, I love that. That's impactful, and that's good stuff. I love that.
Yeah. Can I share like 30-second quick finish insight with that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Go.
So with that, like the moment you start trusting your past success more than like your present conditions, you start to already lose, because what happens is people, if you think of like the football player in high school who wins the championship, 20 years later comes to reunion, and it's just like, oh, I learned, like we won the championship. This is so awesome. And everyone in the room's just like, dude, what the heck have you been doing these last 20 years? If that was your biggest success. And so people repeat what's worked because it feels safe. It proves their identity. It eliminates uncertainty. When the moment of success that you have, so many people keep it as a barrier, but really it's just another point in a tennis match. It's just another basket in basketball. It's just another lap as you're running a marathon. It's like, it's just the next thing. To you, it might feel big because you've had to work so much to get there. And that's awesome. Post about it, gain that experience, learn the lessons, but don't let it be the guiding northern star. Don't let the reason why you're doing something be something that happened in the past. Because a marriage becomes strong, not from how you start in a marriage, but after all the challenges and the obstacles that you faced, and you're still together.
Brilliant.
I'll leave it with that.
Mic drop. Oh, it's so hard to follow up on that. That was so good. I'll share my spontaneous thought here, because Hollywood has portrayed every single war fought through any battle, that there is a clear enemy and there is a clear protagonist, right? And because of that, we only think that there's good and evil, but sometimes wars are fought for other reasons. But the majority of wars are definitely fought because of greed. And one of them I found, this is randomly, I just opened this one up. It says, the general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to protect his country and do good service for his sovereign, is the jewel of the kingdom. So, a powerful lesson in humility, a powerful lesson in the reasons why we go to battle and the reasons why we even care so deeply about our mission and purpose. And to me, that's huge. Like I have evolved and morphed my my ego as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and as just a general human being over the hard years of being an entrepreneur, because of how personal it can be when you fail. Let me tell you, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. But if you plan to be a strong-hearted, willed person, start the entrepreneurial journey, because it will teach you at accelerated rates on how to mature, on how to be somebody who's willing to roll with the punches, and you learn lessons the hard way. And that's the only way to learn. If you're afraid of failure, this is not the road for you. But if you're willing to learn and you're willing to grow, quoting my dear I guess virtual mentor in Les Brown, if you fall on your back, learn to land on your back, because if you can look up, then you can get up. And for me, that's the advice here, is the general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace is the jewel of the kingdom.
Boom, Wesley, I don't know why you said you're going to have a problem. That was excellent. All right, John, shall we head on out with the end of this?
Ladies and gentlemen, The Art of War, Sun Tzu. Grab your version. I grab one every year, apparently. And it's a great read. There's so much more that we can unpack. These literal last 60 seconds spontaneity just shows you that we can unpack dozens and dozens of episodes about this book, but we tend to focus on the important lessons and also leave it up to you to decide what you're going to do. So for anyone listening to this, please check us out at mychampionscircle.com, where we support entrepreneurs and business owners in their endeavors. We bring them into a community, we coach them, and we use accountability to accelerate their results. That is who we are. And the Champion Reads podcast was created by Willie Blake and Ian Sturmer and myself to bring applications and awesome takeaways in the world of best-selling books, because we know that CEOs on average read 60 books a year. Therefore, we are trying to keep up with that statistic. And long story short is, if you'd like to connect with us and suggest a book or anything that we'd like to read, or even just contact us in general, subscribe to any one of our channels. We're everywhere on all podcast channels. It is the Champion Reads podcast. And also, I just want to thank Willie for being here, for allowing me to jump in and kind of lead the discussions, but also to help host. And for any other information, please connect with us. And last but not least, is if you are struggling in business and or in life, just know that it is through the power of community that you can find the strength within to build, grow, and to conquer. They say in the African proverbs that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. And that's where having people in your corner and in your community, you will too find the strength to carry on. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of our podcast. We'll see you on the next episode, where we'll be introducing best-selling books and our opinions. And please join in. We'll see you then.